This program has been approved for one IDCEC CEU. To receive credit for this program, please submit your full name, IDCEC number, program class code, and your summary essay to ceu@iida.org. The program class code is located alongside the title of this program on the IIDA Academy page. For a certificate of completion to use toward another certifying body, please submit the same information to ceu@iida.org. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 2, Episode 1 of IIDA's webinar series, Collective Design. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. I'm really excited about today's program. We have some fantastic panelists. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be. I am seeing some shout outs and hellos from as far away as Botswana. And I know that we have some folks from Kenya who are joining us. So welcome and thank you so, so much. We're so pleased today to have with us Adaeze Cadet, principal at HKS, Susanna Covarrubias, design principal at Gensler, and Rachelle Nolan, principal at IA. And we're all going to have a conversation about adjusting and designing through change. Now, we know that pre-pandemic, change was the constant. And it seems like in this moment that we've been living through, this year that we've been living through, it's been change and more change and more change. We've adapted to a virtual existence. We're re-emerging into a very different world and very different workplace and very different lifestyle. And for this program, we're particularly curious about how designers and firms have shifted and grown during this time. And while we acknowledge with a very heartfelt acknowledgement that there's been hardship, we've also recognized that this has been a revelatory moment and a moment of great opportunity and a moment of great innovation. And we'd like to take a little bit of our time today to also focus on some personal well-being and some organizational health and community wellness. All of these things are incredibly intertwined at this moment. And so greetings to my panelists. How are you all? Thank you for joining us. And let's dive in and get started. And I'd love for each of you to share with one another and to share with the audience kind of how you're doing, and then how have you adjusted to change, and then more change, and then change again, right? That positive pivot maybe that we've all had. Who wants to get us started?
I'm happy to.
Excellent. Hi, Rochelle. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. You know, change is the only constant. Obviously, we've said this over and over again in the last year and a half, and I think I've adjusted pretty well, I hope. But it's such an opportunity. Like I think that that change is really important and needed to be able to grow and evolve. I grew up with change in my life constantly. I was always the new kid in school. Every year we moved around so much, and I think that really helped me kind of evolve during this. Okay, that doesn't work, let's pivot. That doesn't work, let's pivot, and to be able to adjust our thinking. You know, what's adjusted and changed. I think that letting go of the things that I couldn't control was a growth experience for me, because you know I was always trying to control the design and the people and the clients and the outcomes and make the best thing for everybody. And you know we couldn't control that anymore during the pandemic. And then learning that again is letting go of the things that I could control but I shouldn't. I think that was a really important lesson for all of us throughout the year, and just really being kind to ourselves and letting go of things that you really shouldn't or couldn't do anything about.
Yeah, excellent. Adaeze or Susanna, how have you adjusted? How are you doing and how have you adjusted?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely an interesting experience, I think, that we're all going through. It's very new to all of us, unless you were, 100+ years old, right? So having to adapt to that change and just the the work structure, figuring out how to have some definition between work-life balance, which I think we'll get into a little bit later, adapting to that, and echoing kind of the things that were said about being able to adapt more than normal and think about things on the fly, because this change is so real and no one really knows how to deal with it. So seeing clients change their minds a little bit more than normal because they're trying to react and respond, and you're trying to react and respond. Figuring out, even within our project teams, how we're working together, how we're collaborating more in this virtual space has been a learning lesson too, which I think will help carry forward into how we practice in the future too.
Yeah, perfect. Susanna.
So I share pretty much the sentiments shared here, and I will add that we as designers are, what we do is solve problems. So when a problem comes, we get super excited and we go and run and solve it. So we're all like in Teams, in Miro, in Zoom things from one day to the next. That's amazing. And we were all like proud that we could still work, in a virtual way. But there's a whole slew of other things. And I think that we are still living in a test ground. And we still don't have the answers for everything because it's much more complicated. There is not just solving for how you work, it's solving for how you live, how you school at home. So there's a lot layered, one thing on top of the other, that we are still learning through it, which is fascinating because it's not that simple.
It's not that simple. Adaeze, you said something, you used the word forward, and it made me think about cadence and momentum. Have you felt, and this is open to the three of you, have you felt as if you've been moving forward in time? Time has been such a wonky thing in this moment that we're living through. Have you felt as if you're moving forward, or, maybe the other side of that is, are you helping your clients move forward instead of kind of staying stuck in this moment? Because at some point, we have to move out of crisis management mode and just into the normal management of life. And so what's your cadence been? What's your rhythm been?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in the beginning, I did feel a bit stuck, and I felt like we were kind of spinning a little bit and churning and not really pushing things forward. But as we've acclimated to this environment, there's been more of a shift to think about what's next. Like there's this sense that there's this light at the end of the tunnel. We're getting somewhere, right? So let's start thinking about that. How are we planning forward to that? What does coming into the office look like? And thinking about those steps forward and what lessons we've learned that we can take and carry us through that transition phase. So there definitely has been a shift to that thinking about what it is. And from the client side too, I think initial reactions were like to, cover everything in saran wrap. Like it was this big jump, and then now it's starting to think about, okay, we want to have the safety, we want to do these things that we've learned, but we need the human connection. And I work in hospitality and thinking about what that experience is for the guest and how that ties together. And so, you can't have everything completely, sealed off and hermetically sealed. Like we need that human connection. So now it's that shift of thinking, how do we do that through design, providing safety, but still remaining connected and having that sense of humanity.
Yeah, that's a great point. Rochelle or Susanna, how are you helping your clients think forward, right? I loved Adaze's point about, that being, feeling that sense of spin or being stuck in workplace or in other disciplines. How are you helping your clients think forward?
It's interesting because our clients are desperate, no? And in the past, our clients love hearing what we are doing with other clients. Can share with them case stories and how it ended up being and how the design is working for other clients, so they can see the whole thing. Now we have to tell our clients, look, now there are no presents. So whatever decision you make is new, it's a new thing. And the other client is going to be new for them. So you will need to take your own risks, but they need to be in alignment of who you are, what your culture is. And it's the first time that really you need to look within. And clients not always feel very comfortable with that. Because looking within is asking their employees, whether it's via survey or something, and getting the information of, and getting the finger on the pulse of what the workforce, where they want to go or what they feel comfortable with. So leaders need to be open now, open to what they will hear, and they will have to act on it.
Yeah.
No, Susanna, that's such a great point. I think we're often asking the wrong questions, and we have to guide people to that. This is not about solving the mystery of the 7-foot circle and all of the spaces, right? We wouldn't have jobs if that was the thing. Algorithms can do that. But it's about talking about our buildings and our people within our buildings and our relationship with these spaces. And if employees are going back to work and they're thinking about their building or their community or their environment, what emotions is that evoking for them? Our relationship with buildings always evokes an emotion. Going to work, thinking about going to a building in that elevator, in that space. And what emotions is that? Is it scary? Is it toxic? Is it inspiring? Like, what is it? And paying attention to that from a design standpoint and telling our clients that's what you need to be paying attention to. It's prioritizing the human and the empathy and the relationship with these spaces, not dimensions and keeping everybody 7 feet apart.
Do you three feel that this is a good moment to kind of reintroduce the conversation around, right? We never like to talk about design being an experiment or being open to failure. But I've certainly been hearing that clients even dismissing that fear of failure. And so are you having those kinds of, that's an uncomfortable conversation. Potentially to have with a client. How are you maybe approaching that experimentation? Let's try this. Susanna said this is there's no precedent for this moment that we're having. How are you approaching that with clients and talking about the potential of failure?
On our end, we talk a lot in terms of allocating a portion of your space for piloting and knowing that the pilot will evolve. But obviously you are not making guesses on the air. You really need to engage in a consulting effort in order that you can really get the intel, the data, and listen to the employees and listen to all the ones involved so that your piloting has a really solid base. So you're giving it the best chances, but you know that it will evolve. Because if you take one isolated example, there's employees that are working while they're schooling at home. So that employee, in answering a survey, might give very different answers than if that employee has the children at school suddenly. So you need to continually evolve the data and evolve the results and the pilot. I
think clients are being incredibly brave about that as well. They're okay failing. They're saying this is a time when we should be taking risks. We should be innovating. And if we fail, that's fine. Let's do it fast. Let's do it right. And let's move on. But they're being so experimental and so brave. And I think that's inspiring for our communities.
That's great. That's great. In these conversations you're having with clients, you're obviously maybe relating to clients a little differently, and perhaps over communicating, hyper communicating. Just take a moment. What are some things that you're doing to stay connected both with your clients and with your teams? We all have the platforms, we all have Teams, we all have Zooms. What else are you all doing to stay connected?
Yeah, I feel like that's something that's definitely had to evolve too within this changing environment. And there was a sense kind of in the beginning, almost like there was a hyper connecting. And so people felt like everything had to be Zoom, even though it's like, well, this is a 2-line email. Like we don't all have to be so trying to find that balance on how to connect. And there's a lot of tools, like you said, that existed before the pandemic that we had access to, but we didn't really use them because I could just walk over to so-and-so's desk.
Right.
Shifted too, and how we actually stay connected. And so there are more, using Teams chat, actually setting up a team for the team. And we're actually talking through it, using the software, how it's intended, and using Miro and things like that. So when we're presenting with the client, we still want to try to give them that feeling that we're all in the same room, even though we're not. So we'll do things like with 3D models that will do multiple views, where if we were doing something in the office and we had a physical model, we just set it down. But now it's like for example, that when we would show it in multiple views, layer it in to kind of give you that sense that you're manipulating and moving through the space. Using virtual experiences as well to help with that. So you're actually doing more walkthroughs and helping the clients understand that spatial relationship. And then we're still, I think we're still kind of struggling with how to stay fully connected, because before the pandemic, you could just, have drinks afterwards, have happy hours, stay, physically be connected to the client. And so we're doing it virtually, but it doesn't still feel so great. So I'm looking forward for that shift where we can actually get in a room together again. But we're definitely trying.
Yeah. Any thoughts on staying connected, Susanna or Rochelle?
I'm going to tell one that is a little bit of a funny one, but one of the things that suffers is culture. Mm-hmm. And we started a program in our office in Seattle that we call the Variety Show, and it's at lunchtime. It never gets recorded, and people sign in and they do their piece. So you have an hour in which you have 6 different pieces, people doing crazy things. So that to me has been one of the best ways of keeping a sense of culture in a virtual world, because you're connecting with these individuals in their creative expressions. And the funny thing is, the most introverted, or the ones that you think they're the most introverted ones, get out there and do these things in the screen, and they dress up or take the clothes off. I don't know, they do everything. So that has been fantastic. It's an hour that you don't stop laughing, that you learn about your teams much more in another creative arena, and it relaxes you because it's not work.
Right.
What I love that hits on is the sense of humor. Everything's been so heavy and so serious for the past year. And I think people almost feel bad being able to laugh because there's been so much, death and destruction and change and all of that. But I think it's been incredibly important to give people laughter and that sense of humor, and just be able to say, what we do is really important and we're changing people's lives, but we're not saving lives here. Like, we have to be able to have some sort of sense of connection and humor, and let it be okay to laugh and to smile when people think that maybe it's not, because it's, rude or unsensitive or something. So I love that you guys created something that gives people an avenue to do that.
It's almost like we have some kind of collective form of survivor's guilt, right? The pandemic has been so devastating, and we're aware of that devastation, and you want to honor the suffering, but we also know that life goes on. But collectively, how do we move through this moment? And Susanna, your example also hits on something that we've lived through, this moment that's been very humanizing, that in our relationships with our coworkers and on our varying and assorted platforms, we've heard kids and seen dogs, and technology has failed us. There's been this wonderful moment of humanizing life. Will that continue when we return to whatever the next iteration of the workplace will? And how will we support, right? We had all the pre-pandemic, we had all the conversations about authenticity, and now we're talking about the real. We've seen inside of people's homes and in their lives. How will we support that desire for those kinds of connections in a return to the workplace?
To me, that's one of the biggest ones, because let's say pre-pandemic, you have employees go through the door of their office and they put on the work persona and they're the work persona traveling through the office and doing their thing, and then they leave. Like you explained it, now it's different because you see the dogs and the children screaming, and so now employers and companies need to attend to the whole human being, because once you saw that, there's no way back. You need to move forward with that information, with that as part of the whole equation. So you need to have systems like ecosystems in which you are addressing all of it, and you're yeah, in different companies, we can do it very differently, but we're working one specific company that is actually thinking about, for example, doing these outposts that are small offices in a neighborhood. So work goes to them. And these are for individuals that live further away, or they have families, or then outposts in nature where people can just calm down and be in a place of, so really you're attending to the human being as a whole, not just the work, productive.
And in multiple environments too, right? Because we've got those that will be going downtown to the office, those that are going to a satellite space in the suburbs, those that are still in their home, those that might be in a virtual work environment. There's all of these different places that people are meeting from the same team. And so creating that equitable environment for all of them is 100% real. And we can't just ignore this front row seat that we've had into people's lives and go back to the office and ignore that happened. And, you know, no one's a robot at home. People are authentic and they speak naturally, they sit naturally, there's so much balance in it and so much good about it. And I love a quote that our CEOs constantly say, never let a good crisis go to waste. And this is that thing that we have learned in that, is that the office isn't one singular environment. It's multiple environments, multiple people, multiple emotions, multiple times a day that we have to be paying attention to.
Adaeze, from a hospitality standpoint, kind of acknowledging that entire person. And also, I know that the hospitality industry was also addressing wellness pre-pandemic, but wellness is going to be a huge part of the hospitality environment as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the things that we're seeing in commercial world, you know, having more access to outdoor space and feeling, you know, having that guest room feel safe for you, and then the interactions in the common spaces. What does that look like? Where do we bring in more, you know, ideas of wellness? Biophilia comes into play, and that's something that will carry on past this pandemic and bring it forward, so that you are thinking about things more holistically and how that people are actually going to be experiencing the space and interacting with each other.
So recently there was an article in the New York Times that obviously stated that remote work is here to stay, and addressed what, you know, these major shifts that we're going to be seeing, particularly in cities. What has this conversation been about what the workplace is going to look like, feel like, be like? And I'm thinking kind of near term and longer term, and then even thinking about you all in your own offices. What is a return to your firm, to your studio, going to look like or feel like for you? And has that started? I recognize that, you know, in different places across the world, we're at different phases of a return. But what is that looking like for you all in your lives and in your firms?
Yeah, I mean, at HKS, we have an internal research group. And so obviously, as this pandemic is happening, it was an opportunity to dive into this. And so they've constructed a re-entry plan back into the office. It has a whole decision tree to figure out if you really feel comfortable going to the office. There's definitely protocols that are put in place for the near term and how, you know, we're going to have temperature checks and all of these things coming into the office. But then it's also led to something that's been in the works for previous years as the workforce has changed and shift to birth this flexible work experience plan that we have now, which come out of this idea that, you know, some of the things that we've touched on just now, that you don't all need to be in the same room all the time, every single day. Like adding that flexibility, keeping connected to the humanity that maybe somebody doesn't want to, you know, being in LA, not everybody wants to commute an hour every day, you know, and maybe doesn't need to. And we've shown through this pandemic that we can still be productive while working in our individual spaces. And an interesting thing that's happened too is, before we had a handful of people that would work from home, and, you know, they were always kind of off in this corner, and it was like, oh, wait, we need to log into Zoom and make sure, you know, Karen can come in, you know, so, but now we all have to do it. It shifted our workflow in a way that it can continue forward, so that we have these flexible work environments, and it starts to level that playing field, so that when people are, you know, when we're working with our team in Dallas or another team in another city, we're all coming to this communal virtual zone, and it helps that playing field and give us that kind of framework as we return to this new structure for the office.
Rochelle, you used a great word when you were talking about this just a few minutes ago, equitable. And it's going to be incredibly important for people who are working remotely or continuing to work from home, that seamless and as flawless a work experience as people who are in the office, and that there's no value judgment if you are working from home versus working in an office. And how are those conversations happening with your clients about that equity around where we will be working from?
You know, I think it goes down to some really tactical processes and going, okay, what does everybody have to begin with? What is the equipment? What's your IT policies? What's your HR policies? What are the things that you're giving everybody, whether it's at home or in a virtual space or in a city space or whatever office they're in, so that they all have that same equipment. I know a lot of companies, you know, were issuing out equipment and just handing things out like crazy, and some were not, because they didn't have the ability to do so, or the processes to do so. I think we're seeing these questions come from clients. We're getting asked, how do we do this? And it's up to the clients to prioritize what's important for them, where they're putting their money, how they're spending on technology, and how they're investing in their different forms of real estate. And so we've really been going through a lot of different change management processes with them, and trying to help them understand, based on your company, your goals, what are the things that you're going to be able to provide to your teams to make this an equitable experience, because it can't just go back to baseline. We're not going to be back where we were, where everybody has all different kinds of setups, 10 years ago. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. It will put increased emphasis and importance on purpose, right?
Yes.
I think up until this point, we talked about how people would rally around the physical space, and, quite honestly, right, they were rallying around culture. And so in lieu of physical space, what's the campfire? What's the base camp that is being created by organizations and by designers, giving people something to rally around, because we need that, right, as human beings? Is it experience? What is it? What are we going to rally around?
I think we have been rallying around experiences, making sure that we're providing our teams something to be a part of, whether that's a virtual thing or an artistic thing or whatever, but putting out these little nuggets. And I think the most important piece about that is never go, okay, this is what we're going to rally around, and then nobody does it or clings on. So then it just drops, right? So you have to go, okay, well, what about this? Or what about this? Or speaking to the different languages that people speak within that. Some people really respond to doing a museum tour together virtually. Some people really want to meet up in a park together. Some people really just want to go to, cocktail creation classes or barista classes together or something like that. We've always rallied around food. Breaking bread brings us together. It's hard to get away from that in this environment. And so you just have to experiment and be okay with that and be nimble with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting, because if you follow the stats, we hear that 70% of individuals want to work in a flexible way, in a hybrid way, and that 65% of employees or workers, they really miss the social connection. So the two things kind of like work, you can see them as working a little bit on opposing, but now everyone wants everything. You want to be physically connected, which is very important. It's important for innovation, it's important for creation, it's important for just human need. But the flexibility, that total flexibility at times sacrifices some of the other. So the policies that you put in place are super important. The agreements, how are you going to move forward?
From a context of furniture and desking, and we know that we've got manufacturers who regularly tune in and listen to our webinars. Are there innovations that you are seeing or beginning to see, or at least hearing about, or even your clients are asking about? Kind of what change do you see in texture and materiality, in FF&E, in the material and physical aspects of the workplace. We're looking for comfort, we know, right? And we're looking for cleanliness, hygiene and cleanliness, but
Yes.
but what else, right? Is it going to be a bajillion plexi screens? What?
I think that the other one that is playing a lot, and we are starting to see in all projects, is that our earth. Our clients are asking in every single project, we need to do something that is the right thing to do. So whether it's using specifying materials are not in the red list, or doing the net carbon, which is really complicated, but they want to do something. So there's going to be the question to all manufacturers, whether it's textiles or furniture, everything, that clarity of what components, what materials are embedded in the fabrication of those. There's going to be a lot of pressure in that.
So very much sustainability, being mindful of climate change, very high on the priority list.
That's baseline right now. I mean, people aren't going to want to join companies that aren't putting the planet first. It's that whole people and planet conversation is baseline, that you have to meet those standards to be able to be a relevant, any sort of organization to move forward.
And Adaeze, in the hospitality world, will our hospitality spaces be looking the same, feeling the same?
Yeah, exactly. I think they're going to kind of echo that. Whereas before it was kind of like, okay, we have this building and then we should do some sustainability. We know it's good. It's like back here. But I think now it's moved more to front of mind with this whole idea of looking at, again, the human experience, how we're actually moving through these spaces, and the healthiness component, I think. So now it's even more of an added value and a selling point, to have well spaces, to have lead spaces. And so it gives the end user that sense of feeling like they're in a clean, healthy space, and you feel better. Again, this whole pandemic has given us so much stress and anxiety through just this shared experience. People are going to be craving for workspaces, for hotels, for, spaces that make you feel like, and if we can bring more of that breath into the design, into the space, I think that's something that we'll see a shift moving forward into both.
And obviously, in addition to sustainability, obviously that emphasis on equity and inclusion will be critical.
Yes.
Critical and vital and visible. And so thinking differently about inclusive design as well, so that all people feel welcome in all spaces. Before we move to audience questions, let me ask each of you kind of a super broad question that's personal and professional. What's important to you or your firms or your studios? Because I'm super nosy, I'm asking this about what's important to you. What's important to you now that perhaps was not, that you didn't think about as much, or maybe was not as important 2 years ago, pre-pandemic? What's been revelatory that's really bubbled to the surface for you from a design aspect, or from a personal aspect, or a leadership aspect?
From a personal aspect and I think leadership aspect, there's been two things that have really bubbled to the top, and not at all that they weren't important before, but it seems to be my new mantra, is encouraging people to find whatever their version of faith is. I think we all need a lot of help right now, and there's a lot of therapy apps and all kinds of things to deal with PTSD, and we're all learning a lot about our health. But I think that it's been, I've really been encouraging just personally my friends, family, whatever that version of faith is. It could be praying to a rock, but find your own. And then also really paying attention to the health of the projects and the health of our clients and the health of our employees, and how the three of those things really interact. I think that we've been very focused on design, get it done, design, get it done. What's the best thing that we can do, as fast as we can, or as meaningful as we can, but really taking a deep dive into what is the overall health of this project, not necessarily from a sustainability standpoint, but from, you know, the drawings, the team, the client, the consultant interactions, the rep interactions, the design that we're doing, the level, are we pushing the limits, and then making sure that the client and the employee relationships are really healthy, and just checking in with our clients in a different manner, you know, asking, how really are you doing? Everybody says fine or good, or it's crazy, or it's busy, or whatever, but really, how are you doing? Like human to human, what's going on? So that's bubbled to the top quite a bit.
Yeah, that's great.
Good. The one that has been in my mind myself is, I was in a meeting with some other individuals from Gensler and transformational design. What's the next thing? And we were saying, well, we're a great design firm. And then I will quote Becky Mawena from our Baltimore office. He said, yes, we're a great design firm in the world, but we need to shift to being a great design firm for the world. And that is what it really resonated in me, because you will not be a good designer if you cannot address issues that have to do with human beings, social issues. If your design is not inclusive, if all those other things, and if you're not being good to our earth, if we keep on building thousands and thousands and millions of square feet of like waste, you know, I think is the two things that to me are like, I don't know. If we can address those, I think that we will create a better world. And I really, Rachelle, I'm really on the humans, like the humanity, that whole humanity is so important.
Perfect.
On a personal level, I think I've learned the importance of work-life balance, because it's all happening in the same space. It's all happening where I live. So it's really important for me to have a ritual and habits. And so I still get dressed for work every day. I commute home by switching into my sweats and over to the couch. Like, I will not work on the couch. I have to work at my desk. So really trying to get those clear boundaries of what's work time and what's home time. So that's been a very big learning experience. And I think also for leadership, you know, thinking about the importance of mentorship and making sure that that doesn't die in this virtual environment, and being intentional about reaching out to, you know, younger staff and making sure that they still feel connected, and having just, you know, I'll have some just one-on-one chats with them that aren't work related, just like checking in, because we lose that, you know, water cooler chat that we didn't have before, and just and making sure I have to put more of an effort and move with more intention to stay engaged with younger staff. And then I think on the design side, it's really been interesting because of some of the things that we talked about, right? Like, you have to be willing to fail, and this is new territory. And so there's much more importance on designing with intention and moving with intention. Everything has to be thought through. You have to be thinking about, you know, the stakeholders, how you're affecting the community. Because this is new territory, you can't just rely on, oh, well, I've done that for the 10 years, so I'll just do it again. You really have to be moving with intention and designing with intention and thinking about all these moving parts and how they can come together.
Yeah. That was great. I love your point about having ritual, right? It feels like we've been living through this blur, not even knowing what day it is, let alone what time it is. And so having ritual associated with spaces in our home, and even with what we wear, although I'm pretty sure I'm not giving up yoga pants anytime soon. Blur's Day, somebody just posted it. It's like, yeah, we just moved from Blur's Day to Blur's Day. Some questions from the audience for you all. Here's one. Pre-pandemic, many corporate office spaces were aiming toward open space. And while many are trying to social distance, there is still very much the need for social interaction. Do you believe that future offices will still work toward kind of an open office concept, or do you believe that we'll go toward more distance or private space, or a hybrid of some such? So again, being predictive about what our workplace is going to be like. Any thoughts?
I think that the workplace will be way less desks and way more of everything else that is about experiences. It's about the social aspect. It's about learning together. It's about innovating together. But less desk, more of everything else.
Yeah,
That's
I
that.
totally agree. I kind of smiled to myself as we were talking. It was literally in our Los Angeles office right before the pandemic started. We had this whole plan. We were densifying. We were going from 6.5 desks to 5 feet desks and getting, because you don't really need so much eye space. It's more about the we space. And so we were squishing everybody and doing all that stuff literally right before the pandemic. And then it's like, oh, whoops, you can't be 5 feet next to each other. So we had to adjust that. And so, echoing what Susanna said, now we're thinking about taking desks out and having more collaborative space. I think we're still, because the way that the MEP systems are happening within it, we're going to still have that shared air. So I don't think there'll be a push to having more privatized offices, because you still would have to wear your mask in that space. But I think having more community space and, giving us more space, more social distancing. But I think there's still going to be that sense of open space and a lot more emphasis on that collaborative space and having that be spaced out so you can still gather but still feel like you're distanced.
Good, good. A question with regard to career trajectory within a firm, that there are so many firms are traditional, and so that idea of being seen and being present and being interactive when you're on site, all of you as leaders, are you rethinking about in managing particularly younger talent or new talent and people who won't necessarily be in an office? And what career advice are you giving to talent and to other designers about actually not feeling badly about working from home? And
That's
that
such
kind
a
of goes
hard
to mentor.
question.
That is, and that goes to mentorship. I mean, it's a way of rethinking how we lead as well. But traditionally, you had to, show up to grow up, and that's changed.
It's totally changed. And I think it's important that we understand that people in the design industry, we're all adults, and we need to assume best intentions. Just because you don't see somebody at their desk or, lit up on Zoom or whatever, doesn't mean they're not working. I'm a huge advocate for some of our best ideas come in non-structured environments. So taking a walk, taking a shower, taking your dog out for a run or whatever, those ideas just like pop into your head, and it's so exciting because you're like, I got it. And then you can get back to your desk and like knock it out. So I really encourage people to have a variety of workspaces within their own environment, whether it's at home or at the office or in nature or at the park or on the mountain, because it doesn't mean you're not designing. It doesn't mean you're not working, but you do have to be more intentional about communicating that and communicating to your team where you are, what you're doing, yada, yada, and then go take that time and design.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and shifting more of the emphasis on the work and the output and the quality, which is something that has always been important to me, because if somebody can get the same amount of work done in 4 hours that somebody took them 12 hours, I'm not giving that 12-hour person brownie points because they're sitting at their desk, or doing, just because it looked like they're working, they might not be working. So really the shift is on the output and the quality of work that people are putting forward. And it does kind of level the playing field a little bit with that, to where, that one person who's putting in, 20 hours of overtime, well, if their output is less than someone who's putting, you get that leveling of that playing field and really focusing on the work and the quality of work.
Agreed.
Being intentional about checking in and keeping those lines of communication open so that people can trust you and say, okay, you're working. I know you said it's going to take 2 days. I'm expect to see something in 2 days, checking in intermittently, but just being able to have more of a dialogue too. That's part of it, just to stay connected with each other.
Yeah, there's a new train of thinking of like in the future, how you even change compensation, because we value by the hour. We value the hour. We say, did you do your time sheet? And you have to put hours and what you did. But really, you should be valuing the output, like you said, what came out of that hour, And I think in a future totally flexible environment, we will start shifting that, because you will not be seeing the hour, you will not be seeing the people sitting at the desk. It's all going to be very ephemeral, but you will see the output. And that's, so it might start changing things. I think that there's going to be a lot of changes coming, a lot.
We've got some questions from some educators. And so for all of you, some kind of a two-part question, some advice that you have for students, and then also students who are currently enrolled in design programs, and then for those students who are graduating or perhaps on searching for jobs, what advice do you have about the job market in our industry? So for students who are currently in school, and then also for students who are looking and hoping to be settling into jobs fairly shortly.
Don't be discouraged. We need you now more than ever. That's my advice. It's the world's opening back up. We need all kinds of design thinkers. You know, I think we all agree that, you know, everybody's hiring and the world's turning again. It's not going to happen immediately, but, you know, stay the course, be awesome in what you're studying, and expand now.
And the other one is, like, I would advise any student to talk to a wide variety of firms so that they really go to a place that from day one, they know that it will capitalize on what you are bringing to the equation. Don't just take the first one that came about. Like, be picky, talk to a lot of people. And in talking to a lot of people, you will get to meet a lot of people, which is always good.
Very important.
Yeah. Perfect. A quick question here on what other future trends do you think the pandemic has accelerated? So for instance, healthcare at work, wellness, home office stipends, things like that. Are there any other trends out there that have been accelerated by the pandemic? Any things we should be watching for?
I think designing virtual environments, you know, that's not a new thing by any stretch, but it's definitely something, you know, that we've been doing a lot of, and making sure that we're staying up on technology. That the trends are going to be more technology driven, more human driven. And sometimes we think that those two things are separate, but they're actually very integrated and together. So I think that the trends are going to circle around people, planet, technology quite a bit. And obviously not super new, but a hardcore prioritization of that.
Yeah. Susanna or Adaeze, anything from a hospitality standpoint? Are we going to be seeing anything accelerated by the pandemic in the hospitality world?
It's funny because I think one of the biggest things that keeps getting said is this whole like contactless check-in and not having, you know, making it more virtual and contactless key fobs. And I think the key fob thing will kind of stay, and the short term will be more contactless. But again, just because of that market, it really is about human connection and feeling connected to, you know, the staff that's working there and other guests. And so I think that'll start to fade away as people get more comfortable with proximity to one another. But the access to outdoors, having a more multifunctional guest room in which you know, instead of going down to the gym, there might be a universal gym equipment that you can request that comes up. And so those kind of things I think will probably carry forward, where you have a little less contact and you have a little bit more functionality into the guest room. And building in more flexibility within the space, you know, instead of having just a dedicated meeting room, it's a meeting room that can do other things. Like this lobby can do other things. What can it do? And making sure you're baking in that flexibility to handle any future stresses, because as all of the doctors are telling us, that there's a high chance it'll happen again. So making sure that we're building in that flexibility for the ever-changing market.
Yeah.
I will add just one little one, which is the active participation of being part of a community, whether it's bringing the community in or reaching out to the community, is going to be much more than before. There has been some of it, but now I don't think that any organization cannot live without being part of the ecosystem of the community. It's an idea, it takes a village to get us, you know. to places, and that is our communities.
That's a great point. Thank you for that, Susanna. And I was going to tag on Adaeze. I read something recently, just at least in the short term, that there is a short-term rejection of people as they are starting to travel again, not wanting to stay in Airbnb type places because people don't want a home environment when they vacation. They're like, we've been home for a year plus. I want my hotel room to feel like a hotel. I want to feel like I'm someplace new and different. And, you know, it's kind of satisfying that wanderlust, I think, that we all have. It's like, you know, I want to feel like I'm away. And even if that away might be, you know, an hour away from where you live, but give me that little bit of feeling of adventure. And I don't want to wash dishes and I don't want to bake bread.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And I think there's been more of a shift of staycations too, because you know, people are a little reluctant to get on a plane and go somewhere, but they would like to stay at this nice hotel that's up the street and have a change of scenery. And to the points that you just said, like being able to order room service and not have to do dishes. I'm so looking forward to not having to do but there's that shift too, and having that change of environment. And you know, the guest room experience is very different from being in your apartment or your home every single day. So I do think people are kind of pushing more to that full-on hotel, whether it be a boutique hotel or, you know, a 5-star large hotel, but shifting to wanting to have that change. And Airbnbs, I think it's weird because there's a little bit of a, and I have to interact with other people. So you get those two different types of travelers, the ones that want to be in a hermetically sealed house that's just them, and then you have the ones that want a completely different change of scenery.
Yeah. Are you, are clients or candidates, either one, talking to you about your stance on social issues and diversity and equity and equality and justice? Are you seeing and hearing that more now than you did pre-pandemic?
Yes.
I imagine yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
It's
what
often the first conversation now versus
That's-
something that's tacked on at the end of a conversation to check a box.
Yep, you read my mind. That's exactly, I was going to ask you. It's like, when in that conversation is that question happening?
Yeah,
At
we've
the
had it
very
as
beginning.
yeah, exactly. We've had it as early as even just, you know, meeting with initial potential prospective clients, and they're asking us what our metrics are for our diversity within our office. Even getting into the specifics, one potential client was asking about, you know, where it is. Like, is it just, do you have any diversity in your leadership? Like, you can give us the firm metrics, but if all of those people are secretaries, then that's not diversity that we're looking for. So we're definitely seeing a response to that, valuing that diversity of thought, because it's, you know, statistically, you will get a better design if you have different looking people that are and designing it together versus whatever that one is, that one type is, it's not going to be as nice as having that diversity of thought. And so there's a real value to that now, and it's shifting the way that clients are even choosing their teams.
Amen. Let's end on a note of optimism. What are you optimistic about and for, and what are you inspired by?
I think I am inspired by the authenticity that we talked about, that word that has come through all of it. And now we can build a future that is real, you know? So let's not lose that. Let's not lose that humanity, you know, because it was painful to get there. And now let's just address it straight on, and we'll build a new world.
Perfect. Thank you, Susanna.
I completely agree. It's such an exciting time right now. And I know that it's a hard time. I know that balance is needed, but I don't think that the pace we were going at and the level of conversations we were having a couple of years ago was sustainable. And I think that universally, we've really shifted our mentality to pay attention to people, pay attention to our communities. What is the design offering the building, the community, the locality that it's in? How are you making the world a better place? That conversation before was like, oh, you know, the hippies and the sustainabilists and, you know, whatever. Now it's like, everybody's excited about that. Everybody's excited to make a change. Everybody's excited to make our world awesome. And I really value that. And I think it's a very exciting time to be in design and to change some of the things that maybe we didn't get right the last decade.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Adaeze?
I completely echo that. And have the beauty about the situation is that we've been in a position where we've been forced to change. It's like Rachelle was saying, we could do that. Okay, we'll do it like 2 years from now. Well, there's always like, okay, well, it's this afterthought, but we are in this position where we have to change, we have to adapt, or we'll become obsolete. And so that's a very exciting shift in our industry, and it pushes that idea of innovation and coming up with these new solutions and having clients that are forced to being open to it so that we can actually see these go through and realize. And so that just really makes me excited. I'm like getting real excited talking about it. It's like shifted our industry, and it just gives us this profound opportunity to change and move the needle like 3 steps forward. We can really push the boundaries, and it's very invigorating. So when I'm stressed out, I think about that as a balance, like, oh yes, this is moving towards positive change in the right direction.
Oh, that's perfect. Adaeze, I love your excitement, and thank you for sharing that. Thank you for joining us. Susanna, thank you as always for your insight and wisdom. And Rochelle, as always, thank you so much for your wise words. Thank you all so much for joining us. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you for the privilege of letting us into your homes and into your workplace, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Cheers from IIDA. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.